Throughout the novel The Hope Circuit, a psychologist's journey from helplessness to optimism, written by Dr. Martin Seligman, Seligman describes his life journey in discovering positive psychology. He explains the foundation of it in 5 parts, also known as PERMA: positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. Positive psychology is the measure of an individual's ability and perception of positive emotions, positive traits, and positive institutions. Positive psychology also focuses on not only bringing an individual back to their baseline mental state, but to actually exceed and go beyond just resolving one's suffering. Towards the end of the novel, Seligman discovers the anatomical circuit in everyone's brain, otherwise known as the DRN5HT circuit, that allows all humans to create a positive mindset within themselves. He initially focuses on learning about learned helplessness, only to realize that control is what is learned and not helplessness. In addition to describing positive psychology as an attainable feat to all, Seligman also describes the important role life experiences play on an individual's mindset. Positive psychology is present throughout everyday life, in decision-making, and through who you surround yourself with. Due to Seligman's belief that anyone can shift their mindset positively, it can become contagious dependent on what types of people or groups you spend time around. For example, if you spend more time with optimistic individuals, then you are more likely to have a positive mindset. To put my knowledge to the test, I decided to interview a group of Vanderbilt students and ask them a few questions that I felt best represented positive psychology.
I think everyone does have the ability to have a positive mindset. I think it depends on the people you surround yourself with, because they have like the biggest influence on you.
I believe that most people are capable of a positive mindset, but I don't believe that everybody is, because I think we're at a place in medicine and technology right now where we can identify what mental illness is and why it inhibits people from experiencing positive mindsets.
Yes, I do think that everyone has the ability to have a positive mindset. Some people just choose not to, and so I think that some people like actively try to be positive in their everyday experiences, while other people kind of just like let life happen as it will. So I think it's a choice, but everybody has the capacity.
One word that I would use to describe myself is intuitive, because I'm very empathetic and people's feelings affect me a lot, especially people I care about.
I would use the word weird. I think that's like the way people react when they meet me is like, that's not something I've seen before.
If there is one word I would use to describe myself, it'd probably be decent. I think my morality is somewhere of a good morality. I think in the grand scheme of things, I think I'm kind of just an average individual, not in a negative way.
When I start thinking about the future, especially surrounded by like college life, it gets really stressful when I'm like talking about that with other people that do focus on the future. So I try to like just live in the moment.
I would say that I'm pretty 50-50 between thinking about the future and thinking about the past.
So I do think about the future in theory, and just like theoretical circumstances. Like I wonder what will happen. I look to the future in a curiosity perspective, I would say, more so than I used to when I was younger.
I think one challenge that I pretty continually face while here is just like constantly feeling overworked and like overcommitted. Just I think by nature of like going to school here and being like such an achiever like I constantly am. I think one thing that has made it kind of hard for me to overcome that is that it's like a constant thing, like it never really ends. And so I try to overcome that, I think, by like taking time to myself and not saying yes to things that I don't necessarily want to do, but it's not always that easy because there's always that like constant pressure to do things and to like be involved.
A significant obstacle that I had to deal with when I was growing up would definitely be my own mindset. I used to have pretty self-destructive thoughts, and I was a perfectionist, and I was also insecure. And I worked too hard to, and what I thought I aspired to be, more so than what made me happy. I've kind of learned lately to aspire towards happiness more so than aspire towards achieving things.
Thank you so much for watching my video. To conclude, I just wanted to wrap up my thought process of the questions I asked and how I created those based on what I learned in the course and the novel, The Hope Circuit. And so my first question sort of asks how individuals perceive whether or not someone can have a positive mindset. And so this gauges the ability to overcome helplessness or bad experiences. And so it also gauges levels of optimism and pessimism in students around campus as well. If they think that others can have a positive mindset, that would reflect more optimistic thoughts versus if their responses tended to be more pessimistic. And that would be, say, for example, they don't believe everyone has the ability to have a positive mindset, or they have a general feeling of a lack of control in their lives, in addition to how they describe themselves. So that goes back to the word that they pick to describe themselves. That can also be an indicator of pessimism, whether or not the word reflects their internal positive traits or how others view them from a societal perspective. These questions also revolve around the 3 pillars of positive psychology: positive experiences, positive individual traits, and positive institutions. And so, do people view themselves positively or negatively, and how does this affect how they treat others or how they believe others see them? And so those ideas were also a basis of the questions I asked. In regard to the question about the future, this was based on Seligman's idea of how important it is to think of the future in terms of positive thinking. And so I wanted to see if and how frequently individuals on campus envision their future. However, this question has a little bit more biases because we are examining college students here, which is important to note because they do have a life after college. And so if we were to examine older individuals, their thoughts and responses might look much different. So again, that is important to note. And finally, reflecting on difficult experiences from the past, whether or not people felt that they had the resilience in order to overcome that experience, engages a lot with positive thinking, and it reflects if they do have a presence of positive individual traits, or if they believe their negative experiences are more based on worldly situations, and they feel like they don't have any control over what happens to them. And that goes back to the test that we took in the beginning of class, where your answers kind of correspond to whether or not you feel like a problem or a situation is internally your fault, or if you believe it's the universe's fault. And so that plays into the idea of control as well. So in conclusion, based on the answers of all of the individuals, I found a lot of correlations between positive mindsets and an individual's experience with mental health, trauma, life experiences, or oppression. So a lot of individuals thought that positive thinking and positive psychology would be much more difficult for individuals who suffered from mental health and clinical barriers. In addition, positivity seemed highly correlated with energy and body language as well. And the words that individuals describe themselves with either reflected a very strictly internal view of how they viewed themselves or how others perceived them. So it seemed kind of on a spectrum. And then finally, most people do envision the future. However, it seems as though the present is a little bit more of a concern. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you learned a little bit more about positive psychology.